In this unit, we're going to study polynomials. In this lesson, we're going to look at factoring by grouping.
Okay, everybody. So in this lesson, we're going to look at factoring by grouping. Okay, grouping. And like it says here, and actually the introduction to this is pretty good, although we probably still have to go through and do an example or two before it really makes sense here. But as a rule of thumb, the factoring by grouping method is used when a polynomial has 4 terms. Okay, typically 4 terms here. Now, how grouping works, okay, is it really is like taking that FOIL and kind of undoing it, but undoing the process of foiling or distribution before you added the middle terms together. Which probably doesn't make a lot of sense here, but it will in a bit. So let's just go through the steps here. So what we're going to do is, first of all, and you always do this first factor out a greatest common factor if possible. Okay, and if you've got a negative is a leading coefficient in there, we want to factor that out too. Okay, just to simplify the expression, we always want to be doing that first. We want to be doing ourselves a favor and helping ourselves up like that. Then what we do is we're going to determine the greatest common factor only for the first 2 terms and take it out. Then we're going to do the exact same thing on the last 2 terms and factor that out. Now, if it turns out there isn't a greatest common factor, we are going to, in either case there, we're going to factor out a 1, a positive 1. Okay. Now, once that's done, if factoring by grouping is the actual type of factor we need to be using here, then there should be a common binomial factor. You should see in both expressions this a plus b and then this a plus b. Okay, whatever that turns out to be here. And so then what we're going to do is we're going to factor out that common binomial a plus b. And then, just like we've done before, you should be able to check to see that you're doing the work right by factoring out by expanding it back out by distribution here. So just so that you can see a couple of examples happening here. So in this first one, we're going to factor x cubed minus 2x squared plus 5x minus 10. Now, we got 4 terms. So that's, first of all, that's my clue that we're going to do factoring by grouping. There is nothing common. There's no greatest common factor to all 4 terms, so we're okay. So now what we're going to do is we are going to group. Okay, so once that's done here, we're going to group the first 2 terms and the last 2 terms. Okay, we group together the first 2 and the last 2. Now, there's something in there that I want to make sure that you're aware of, but we'll talk about it when it comes up. But yeah, so we group together the first 2 terms, group together the last 2 terms. Now we take a look at what's common to just the first 2 terms. So between x cubed minus 2x squared, there is a common x squared, and that leaves us with an x minus 2. So bear in mind, in this first expression here, this first term, I've got 2 factors, an x squared and x minus 2. Then from the 5x minus 10, I took out a common 5, and that left me with x minus 2. So again, we've got this binomial term here, so this term here, I should say. It's got 2 factors. One of them is 5, one of them is x minus 2. Well, now there is this common x minus 2 to both terms, a common x minus 2. So just like in this first one, where you took out that common x squared, now we're going to take out a common x minus 2. Well, what was it multiplied by? It was multiplied by x squared and positive 5. Okay, so if I was to distribute it back through, I would multiply x minus 2 by x squared and then x minus 2 by the positive 5. And that's going to get me back up that one step. Let's take a look at another example here. So this time I've got this negative 2x cubed plus 4x squared minus 10x plus 20. Again, there's 4 terms. So that's a pretty good sign to me that we're going to be using grouping. Okay. And then I do have, in this case, a greatest common factor. There's, first of all, the leading coefficient is negative, so I probably want to take that out. But there's a common factor of 2 to all those terms, so I take that out first. Okay. Now I group together the first 2 terms and I group together the last 2 terms. And you're going to see kind of similar values here to what we just did, but that's just whatever. So in that first two, I take out the common x squared. And then in the second two, I take out the common 5. And so now I've got this common x minus 2 that I then take out. Now, bear in mind, I've still got that negative 2 out front. So negative 2 times x minus 2. And then I've got the x squared and the positive 5 left over that remain when I take out that common binomial. Okay, so sort of similar thing as what we did before here. To really get a sense of what's going on here, we got to take a look at a few examples so that you can see this work. Okay, so the question says factor fully here. So here we go. We look at it and we notice that there are 4 terms. So that's a pretty good sign that we're going to be factoring by grouping. But I want you to notice that right off the bat here, notice that these 2 terms here could be combined into one term. Those could have been added because they're like terms and you would have gotten 9x. So this really is like 10x squared plus 9x plus 2. Now, we're actually going to deal with situations like that where it is combined. But for right now, we're just looking at the pattern. I don't want you to worry about that. I don't want you to try to add those together. Just leave them separated for right now. So we've got our 4 terms. So we're going to group together the first 2 terms, just like the instructions say here. We're going to group together the last 2 terms. Now, when I look at the first 2 terms, the 10x squared and the 5x, that's all I'm looking at right now. There is a common 5 and x between the 2 of those. And when I take that out, that's going to leave me with, when I divide those out, I'm going to be left with 2x plus, and now remember, 5x divided by 5x is just going to give you 1. Over with my second term, in that binomial, I've got a common factor of 2, and that is going to leave me with a 2x plus, and again, 2 divided by 2 is 1. And that's exactly what I want, because notice that that binomial right there is common. It is shared to both of those terms there. Because it's common, I can now write it out front, and it was distributed to two terms here. What 2 terms? Well, a 2x plus 1 is multiplied by the 5x, and then that 2. Okay? And so there you go. If you were to now multiply that 2x plus 1 by that 5x plus 2, you would notice, and watch this when I do it. I'm just going to do it over here. I'm not going to do it for all of them, but I'll do it for a couple here. 2x times 5x is 10x squared. Okay, that's a good sign. 2x times 2x is going to be 4x. Okay, that's that third term. 1 times 5x is 5x. And then 1 times 2 is 2. So there we go. So by multiplying that back out, we go back up to the original term here. So that's, or the original question. That's good. Okay, question B. 2x squared plus 6x minus x minus 3 here. Okay, and I'm glad this question came up right away here. I want you to notice something. Okay, first of all, there's 4 terms, so that's a good indication that this is going to be a factoring by grouping question. But notice that the third term is negative. So when that happens, what I suggest to people is this. And every time I teach this, I encourage people to do this. Put a big old plus sign in between when you do your grouping. It should always be a plus sign in between, which means that that negative there that was on that third term, I need to move it inside. If you don't do that, you run a really high probability of doing this wrong or working with the negatives incorrectly. It's very easy for people to make mistakes with negatives. And if you leave the negative in between, you've almost certainly factored that wrong, unless you're very, very careful. So please just move that negative over. And so now with the first 2 terms here, okay, or sorry, with this binomial, this first binomial, what's common there is going to be a 2x. And then that's going to leave me with x plus 3. And then in my second term, this binomial right here, there is a common negative. So I'm going to take out the negative, and that'll become x plus 3. And that's perfect. That's exactly what I want, because notice that that binomial is now common to both of those terms. So I can factor the binomial out. And the binomial was multiplied by what? It was multiplied by 2x in that first term and negative 1 in the second term. And there you go. And that's how it is when you factor it out. Now, again, I can double check this by multiplying that out. So x times 2x is 2x squared, and that's good. X times 1 is negative x. There's that third term. 3 times 2x is going to be positive 6x. That was that second term. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. So there you go. That's good. That's exactly what I wanted to see here. That's okay. So I'm pleased that I've done that right. Let's keep going. So in this one right here, again, 4 terms, which is good. There's nothing common to all 4 of those terms, so I don't need to take out a common factor. So I'm just going to group together the first 2 terms. So 2a squared minus 2ab. Again, though, that third term is negative, so I'm going to put a plus sign in between and move that negative over. And now, from the 2a squared and the minus 2ab, there is a common 2a. And that'll leave me with an a minus b. And now in my second term here, this binomial, I take a look at it, there's a common b there. But if I take out just the b, that is going to leave me with a negative a plus b. Now that is not the same as the binomial in the first one. The signs are different. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to take out, I'm going to take out the negative as well. And so if you factor out a negative with that b, then that gets you positive a minus b. And that's exciting because now that binomial is common. So I can take out the common binomial factor. In the first term, the a minus b was multiplied by 2a. In the second term, it was multiplied by negative b. And there we go. For question D, again, 4 terms. So I'm going to group together the first 2 terms. And notice in this case that there is an addition inside there. So I don't need to worry about the negative sign. So I'm just going to plug that in. I don't need to worry about anything there. Then I'm going to take out what's common. So 3y squared. And when I take that out, I'll get a y plus a 4, because 3y squared was common. That gives me y plus 4. Now notice that is that second term here. There was nothing common to the y plus 4. Okay, there's nothing common to the y plus 4. So I can leave it, but I'll treat that as if it's a 1 out front. And so now the common binomial here is y plus 4, y plus 4. So I will write this as y plus 4 multiplied by, and in the first term, that's 3y squared. And in the second term, I've got a 1 left over. Now for this next question, up there. So this next question is starting the similar as an earlier one here. Notice that there's a negative in front. So the first thing I want to do, sorry, this isn't similar to one we've done before, other than the fact that we've got this thing that we want to factor out here, but it's starting with a negative. So I'm going to take out the negative. I'm going to take that out of every term. Now, the nice thing about doing that is that it actually forced my third term to become positive. So I don't have this issue with this other negative sign in here. But now I've got this negative in front of these 4 terms here. And I'm going to be doing some grouping. So I'm going to just change those parentheses to a square brackets here when I put my parentheses around, or when I start doing my grouping. So now, negative out front, got to leave that there. So what's common to those first 2 terms here is going to be the x squared, and that'll leave me with x minus 5. And what's common to those last 2 terms is going to be a 3. And that is, again, going to leave me with an x minus 5. That's wonderful. Now, I'm going to factor out the common x minus 5. I don't need to put the square brackets around anymore, because everything that I'm going to write out here now is going to be multiplied together. So I'm just going to leave the negative there. This will be x minus 5. In that first term, it was multiplied by x squared. In the second term, it was multiplied by 3. Everything's multiplied together. I can leave the negative out front. I'm good. Now, this next question right here, notice what they've done here. Now, we've already done a question similar to this, okay, where look at those two factors. They're close. but they're not the same. And so we've done something like this as earlier where, yeah, they were close, but there's a negative that was in there. And that's actually when I was talking about factoring out this negative, my head quickly went to that. Anyway, in order to make these the same here, what we're going to do is factor the negative out of that, that second term here. So this is going to become 5x, 3a minus 2b. And then when I take the negative out, it's going to become positive 9. And again, that 3a term becomes positive, the 2b term becomes negative. And now I've got this common 3a minus 2b. In the first term, it was multiplied by 5x, and in the second term, it was multiplied by 9. Okay, and now 2 more questions. Just move these up just a little bit here. So in this next one here, G, again, I got 4 terms, so that's encouraging. Now, it might not be immediately obvious, but there are factors that are common. And in this case, it turns out, I mean, you might look at it and think, well, 2 or 4, but actually you can go right up to 8. 8 is common to all 4 of those terms. The more familiar we are with multiples, your multiples here, the easier that's going to be to see here. And this will become 12n cubed minus 8n squared minus 9n plus 6. Now, just like I did with the negative up front here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a set of square brackets around when I start to group together the like terms. And notice that my third term is negative, so I'm going to put the plus sign in between, and I'm going to bring that negative in. So this one here is about as busy as it's going to get. Okay, got the 8 outside. Now, to the those first 2 terms, there's going to be a common 4n squared, and that is going to leave me with 3n minus 2. And then in my next term here, in that binomial, there's going to be a common, well, I would say negative 3. I want to take out the negative 3 because I want the n term, I want this first term to be positive, just like it is over here. So I'm going to take out that negative 3, and that will leave me with 3n minus 2. And I'm okay with that. I'm happy with that because I can see that that binomial is common. And so now I've got the 8. I'm going to factor out the 3n minus 2. From the first term there, that leaves me with a 4n squared. And from the second term, that leaves me with a negative 3. Wonderful. And now one more. Again, I've got 4 terms, so I'm quite happy with that. This time here, it's not so hard to figure out what's common. It's going to be a common 4. And that leaves me with 10n cubed plus 8n squared. Not 8n squared. Sorry, I just looked at it and then didn't divide by 4 here. Sorry about that. Plus 2n squared minus 5n, and then 4 divided by 4 is going to be that 1 there, so minus 1. Okay, because of that factor of 4 that's outside, I'm going to put the square brackets there, and then we'll use parentheses to group together the first 2 terms. Again, that third term is negative, so I'm going to put a plus sign there and move that negative inside. Now I'm going to take out what's common. So in those first 2 terms, it looks like I've got a common 2n squared. That leaves me with 5n plus 1. And then here, it's almost exactly what I want, except for everything's negative. So I'm going to take out a negative there, and that'll make that 5n plus 1, which is wonderful. And then this becomes 4. I will take out that common factor of 5n plus 1, and then I will be left with 2n squared from the first term and minus 1 from the second term. And there we go. That's how you would factor that. So hopefully that's enough to give you, kind of get you going here, give you a good push forward with this so that you understand how to do factoring by grouping.